All right, great. Well, welcome everyone to the September version of the Oregon City Business Alliance webinar. So glad to have each and every one of you there. Like to give a special acknowledgement to our elected officials. We have Rachel Smith and Frank O'Donnell with us today from the Oregon City Commission and Paul Savas from the Clackamas County Commissioners. And I know each and every one of you have been very busy dealing with all the various levels of evacuation and just assisting families in our community to deal with this crazy environment that we find ourselves in right now. But I also wanted to give a special thanks to all the first responders in Clackamas County that have sacrificed so much to go out there on the front lines to deal with these wildfires. It's been devastating throughout our community, throughout our county, and throughout our state. And without the first responders being there to go ahead and deal with this, the devastation and destruction could have been so much worse. So we at the OCBA first want to salute each and every one of you and your entities and your agencies for your unrelentless support in putting these fires out. Unfortunately, now we can go outside and breathe some fresh air. So that's something to truly be grateful for. Today, we have a very special webinar presentation. I'm excited to have a very informed and entertaining group of panelists that's going to be talking about all the economic opportunity that's available on the north end of Oregon City. We call that the North Gateway to Oregon City, which is probably the most visible part of Oregon City to people that are driving north and south on I-205, and can play such a pivotal role in the image to other businesses that might want to come to our community for various reasons. The panelists, I believe everybody can see them on our screen today, but we're going to be kind of starting out with the businesses that are located in the southern portion of the North Gateway District, which will be former Mayor Dan Fowler. He's going to be talking about Corner 14, which is a food cart and a brew house facility with microbrews. They'll be located on the former Weiser block where they sold fruits and vegetables. And we're very excited about that new opportunity. And then I'll also touch on this Hilton Hampton Inn and Suites hotel located across the street from the end of the Oregon Trail. After Dan, we're going to introduce Gail, who is the coordinator and director at the end of the Oregon Trail, to talk about some of the new programs that are taking place there. Chris Storey with Water Environment Services will be sharing some of the new economic development plans that they have and the various grants that are available for watershed enhancement throughout our region. Then Brian will be talking about, Brian Shaw, former city commissioner, talking about a new master plan for Clackamas Park and how that can be connected to all these other new economic opportunities through a master plan trail system, and just how best to utilize that amazing resource. And then we'll finish up with Jerry Herman, who's working on creating a better water quality environment at the Cove Project, and what some possibilities are there for parks and mixed use development. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to former Mayor Dan Fowler. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kent. And I appreciate the opportunity to share. We haven't talked publicly too much about our project down at the corner of 14th and Washington Street. And because of that corner, it was a natural thing to call it Corner 14. So it's actually a project that my daughter, Cherise, is really in charge of. We're working on it together, but she is at home homeschooling her 4 children that are all in each different school. So she has 4 different curriculums and 4 different time zones. So she would like to be here with me, but could not attend today because of that. So we're going to pull up a little diagram, hopefully, of the Corner 14, which does consist of the land that used to be occupied by Spicer Brothers Fruit Stand. And in that, we've been working closely with our architect, Derek Metzen, and the city I've had a reputation of being first in many different ways throughout my career in Oregon City, and this is another one that we're first at. So a lot of times you have to work through the issues, try to get things right, and just be patient. And that's what we've been doing here. As you can see from the diagram that's now up, and I hope everybody can see that on their screen, we've been able to utilize the existing building completely. And inside that building, we have established a full bar. So we're calling it Corner 14 Food Cart, Spirits, and Brew. So we'll have spirits and we'll have brew. Inside the building, we'll also have 2 axe throwing lanes. And that will be under a concessionaires agreement with Feckin, who used to be in Kanema. They have started a new company called Celtic Axe Throwing, and they'll be occupying that 2 lanes inside. And we're also planning 2 lanes outside underneath the existing awning of the building. You can see that the parking lot is between the building and the railroad tracks, as well as to the south. And then originally we had 12 food cart pods. We've reduced that to 9. In talking with the fire marshal, there's some new codes coming down that require a 5-foot separation between the carts. So we decided to follow all the existing rules and any new rules that would be coming down that would be not allowed to be grandfathered in. So we've reduced the number to 9, and they create an L-shaped courtyard between the food cart pods and the building. And then in that courtyard area, we will have a covered area of approximately 20 by 50, which will provide covered outdoor seating, as well as an open area where we'll have a propane type fire pit. We'll have some cornhole. If you've followed us on our Instagram page, you can tell that we really are trying to make this family friendly, a place of community, and just a real fun atmosphere to be at. We're doing everything we can to open up, hopefully by the end of October. We have 7 out of our 9 food carts already in hand, a great variety of food offerings. And we'll be saying more about that in the very, very near future, but we're almost 100% full with food carts. So that's a little bit about Corner 14. We're excited to bring that to the community and really can't wait for it to open up. And we'll shift gears a little bit now to heading north. We have a project that I was looking at some dates today, and anyone who thinks that development is easy and fast, I'm going to give you a little bit of a timeline. We bought this property in 1985, 36 years ago, not really knowing what it was going to be. It was a field located behind the Hackett House, which was the very first building that Mark and I restored after we formed our company in 1979. And in 2015, we began planning the hotel. In 2017, we got our final approval from the Planning Commission. Subsequent to that, we had several years of appeals. And in March of 2020, after appeals were finally exhausted, plans were finally drawn, permits were finally ready to be issued in March of 2020, and then COVID hit. And we all know what COVID has done, and what it did for us, particularly with the hotel, is that the appraisals that we needed for the bank financing, everybody put their pen down and just stopped writing them. So we fully intend to bring this project back. We're planning on late spring to early summer of 2021. We see the market slowly improving, and we think it'll be a huge addition to Oregon City. It's 99 rooms. We designed it to be able to be seen from the freeway bridges you're coming across, but creating view corridors so it did not disrupt the view of the end of the Oregon Trail. There's another view. This is a view looking on Washington Street as you're going south. This is a view of that angle. There's another view that we have looking the other way, and this is looking from the intersection of Washington Street looking north, and we added the tower as a feature, and there's always a fine line, and design is something that it's in everyone's eye, but this feature was to complement the Hackett House Tower and to pull that in, even though it's a new structure. So that's that. And then also when we did our land use applications, we have got a master plan approval for a second phase building, which will be 131 apartments. And you can see on the site plan, let's go back to the site plan if you could, that the apartment project will be located north of the hotel, and it'll be closer to the Amtrak station. And there you go. So the mixed use project is the apartments, 131 apartments. So in total, there'll be a 99 room Hampton Inn and Suites and 131 unit apartment project. And it'll really begin to set the tone in the development of the North End. So I'll leave it at that for right now. And if there's any questions, we'll deal with those later.
Okay, Gail, are you ready to go ahead and start? And I'd like to mention, let's get my video here. I'd like to mention for all our participants that are joining us today for the webinar that you can go to the Q&A button on your device to go ahead and submit written questions to our panelists. And after we have everybody doing their PowerPoint slide presentations, we will be having Tim Wiest today going ahead and asking the questions to the whole group of panelists. So please feel free to go ahead and submit your questions at any time, and we'll be keeping track of all those. So Gail, are you ready to go ahead and start talking about the end of the Oregon Trail Center?
Yes, I am. And I want to thank all of you because this is great. We're stronger together. And Dan, I'm so excited about what you're doing for our area. So I'm going to start with a little bit of the how and why we work the way we do. And so first of all, our mission is to preserve the heritage, educate the public, and interpret the history of the Oregon Territory, Clackamas County, and Oregon City, the western terminus of Oregon Trail. Then with that, we are guided by our principles, being inclusive, diverse, and authentic. We also have responsibilities and support from many partners. So City of Oregon City owns our buildings. We are the visitor center and the welcome center for the state of Oregon. So we work with Travel Oregon and also for Clackamas County, Oregon's Mounted Territory. So we work with Samara, with Clackamas County Tourism. So within, then nationally, we're a National Oregon Trail, the official end, and we work with sites along the trail. We have visitors that are repeating, coming from England and Germany. So we have lots of partners, not to mention, or not to forget to mention, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And we have John George on our board. And it started, the relationship started in 2010-11. And with their partnership, we were able to get more of the story. We didn't have enough about the Native American story. So we have lots of partners, like I said, and one of the things I look at is everyone's strategic plans, how we can work together, how we can bring in more visitors. And one of the things the consultants told us years ago is that offering lots of experiences and keeping it fresh. So we had a dream years ago when we walked through the center with the tribal members, John George and Cheryl Kennedy, and that was to produce a Native American perspective 30-minute movie like we had for Bound for Oregon. And I am really proud of working with the tribes. The relationships, as you know, are always way more important than the product. And the relationship and telling that story, working with Dr. Beckham and Cinemagic, that experience has been overwhelming. And so we're looking at our last draft. We're hoping it's our last draft. We have a couple edits that we're making. And then we will be reopening. When we reopen, we will be reopening with the new movie, Oregon's First People. And that's the story of how the westward migration of the mid-1800s interrupted, I should say, and influenced their future. So we're excited about that. There's a lot that content that can't fit in a 30-minute movie. And so we're using Wagon 3. That's where the visitors walk through the theater and end in what we call Abernethy Green, Oregon City. We have an exhibit from the Native Americans there now, but we're going to enhance all of that because, like I like to say, it's Paul Harvey's The Rest of the Story is going to fit in there. And we have lots of ways to show it. So we have the theater in there, so we could do some PowerPoint, just lots of different opportunities. We're also working on, and thanks to Jerry Herman, he helped with, and of course, Metro Enhancement Grants. A couple years ago, we had a dream of having the backside of the Oregon Trail, the 3 wagons, be the Oregon Trail experience. And Jerry Herman has, with his crew, they put in an ADA walking trail, and Lowell Miles from Miles Fiberglass, his company put in 2-scale Independence Rock, and we have murals, well, signage actually, and back there too for the, let's see, what do we have? We have Chimney Rock mural and Buffalo. So anyway, that's been a really fun experience. And when we reopen, we're going to have more programming outside there as well. So that's an opportunity that we can continue to enhance. There's also, we have a Skype program that we do, and what the purpose, we've had that on our website as an offering for years now. And the idea of having that program available on Skype was for schools that couldn't make it into Oregon City, or people that were in Missouri and the other Oregon Trail states. And it's been fairly successful, but now with COVID, I'm thinking we can offer a lot more, and maybe we will start with offering that, and it'll be more popular than it's been. So with technology now, there's just lots of things that we can keep enhancing our programming. So I think that's it. I do want to encourage all of you to let me know if you have ideas for us, because I'm open, and I'm open to working with everybody.
Well, thank you, Gail, for all the updates of what's taking place at the end of the Oregon Trail Visitor Center. And I know I've actually toured myself the displays that Jerry was involved with around the outside of your structures, and it truly tells an amazing story. So continuing on today, our next speaker will be Chris Storey from Water Environment Services. And as Gail talked about the Metro Enhancement Grants, they also offer enhancement grants to go ahead and clean up watersheds, create nature trails that can experience different ecosystems and engage and interact with wildlife. So Chris, would you like to share with us a little bit about what Wes is up to these days?
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for allowing me to share with you this afternoon about Clackamas Water Environment Services. My video, I think, isn't turning on right now, so I'll be the black box that you hear, the voice coming to you like a fireside chat. Next slide, you can see, just to orient folks who Water Environment Services is. We are the regional wastewater and surface water provider. Our general mission, first and foremost, is to protect the public health and the environment, which is to say that there is no pollution in your rivers coming from wastewater or surface water. We're also keen to make sure that there are sufficient infrastructure in place to support economic development. If you want to build something like a hotel or Corner 14 or an expansion of the museum, that the infrastructure is in place to ensure that that can take place. And third, we try to educate the public about water quality so we can all take care of the environment that has been entrusted to us. Next slide. Just to orient you, we serve not just Oregon City, but West Linn, Gladstone, Milwaukee, and Johnson City as a wholesale customers, and the unincorporated Clackamas County, Happy Valley, Hoodland, etc. as retail customers. All part of one regional system, making sure that you get the service you deserve to have clean water. Next slide. We have several measures and initiatives that I want to make sure you're aware of that impact the northern end of Oregon City. The first and probably most prominent is that there's a measure on the ballot this November that we'd like to make sure you know about. We are proposing to install a new outfall pipeline underneath John Storm Park. Consistent with the requirements of the city charter, this requires a vote, so you will see on your ballot the opportunity to say yes to the granting of an easement to allow that pipeline to take place. The project is estimated to cost about $2.5 million and is fully funded already. This is not a tax measure, it's not a request for additional money, it's a request for permission for the city to grant an easement to Wes. Next slide. Just to orient you about where John Storm Park is and why we're talking about this as part of the north end, you can see that it reaches from the treatment plant, which is there at the far end of 213 where it hits 205, and it would run along 205 out along the edge of the apartments, Oregon City Shopping Center, and then underneath the park itself to the river. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that sounds disruptive. I'm not sure I like that, but if we go to the next slide, we can talk to you about what we're proposing to do. Hopefully the dirt agrees with us. We're looking at a construction method that will just use tunneling, including a wet recovery, which means we will have a launch shaft, we'll go down, drill, and then recover in the river, which means we probably, hopefully, will never break the surface of the park itself. We will be between 50 and 70 feet below that, heading out towards the river. So while there will be construction along Old Agnes, there will not be construction, hopefully disrupting folks along 99E or John Storm Park. Next slide. And a key portion of this that we want to emphasize is that we at Wes want to leave it better than we found it. So in addition to any restoration work that would normally be required by the construction, we are also looking at contributing $200,000 to improvements of the park, and we are coordinating that through the Oregon City Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, and they have already identified some areas where they think improvements could be made in John Storm and Clackamas Parks. I believe Mr. Shaw may talk about that a bit more. So that's, you might say, the most immediate issue that I wanted to flag to your attention about what's going on up there, but we've got a few others, as Kent suggested. So, the next slide you will see, we had some sponsorships in an effort to clean up that area on behalf of the community. Our own Shelley Perini had organized a sponsorship arrangement with Solve, and we were going to go and do some work at Clackamas Park and Clackamas Cove to try and do some restoration work. And between wildfires and pandemics and everything else, the events got canceled. So we'll have to try again, but hopefully that will take place. I also want to flag that in that area of the north end of Oregon City, Wes has what's called a good neighbor agreement with the city of Oregon City and the city of Gladstone to demonstrate our partnership and appreciation for the city's hosting a wastewater treatment plant. And we Wes, contribute $200,000 a year to the city of Oregon City and $50,000 a year to the city of Gladstone for use of city guided, you might say, decided projects in that area within the zone of basically half a mile, plus or minus, including Clackamas Park, including John Storm Park, and across the way, so in the Cove area. Those projects are being developed, and the city will be the ones that sort of ultimately decide what happens there. And if you have questions about that, I would encourage you to reach out to them. Next slide. I also want to emphasize that Wes, as part of our mission to both educate and improve the watershed, offers about $300,000 a year in grants. Nonprofits seem to know about this program, but not too many businesses do. So I want to make a specific pitch for businesses. If you have a stream, creek, intermittent flow coming through your property, we have some grants available that can improve that area so that it works better for water quality, for wildlife, and for you. So we issue those every year, and we would encourage you to apply and participate. I was appreciative. Earlier this year, the OCBA circulated that. So all great. And finally, I want to reference that our development review process is under reconsideration, you might say. We received some feedback that it would be good to modernize the rules. And since this is a great time to indulge in some introspection, we've been doing that for the last year. It's coming to a sort of culmination in the next 90 days. And in October, we'll be publishing those rules. So it particularly impacts future development about how you manage surface water and the types of sewer connections. We've designed it to try and be more flexible and create tools for development to be able to achieve what they need to achieve to make themselves effective and efficient in bringing new jobs to our community. In summary, thank you. Next slide. I would just emphasize that there is current and upcoming construction at the facility itself, which is, you might say, the very far end of the north end of Oregon City. We currently have a digester coming online, which has been a 2.5-year project. It entered service last week after being delayed a bit because of the wildfires, and we're now rehabbing the existing digesters. That whole project should be done next spring. But that won't be the last thing that we do there. The outfall project is certainly going to be an important component, but we also just anticipate continuing investment at that facility, particularly around the area of peak wet weather, which is to say that it rains a lot in Oregon, and some of that water, either rainwater or groundwater, gets into pipes. We try to minimize that as much as possible. We're partnering with our cities, including the city of Oregon City, to try and minimize that. But there will be some investment necessary to make sure that the water that is received at the treatment plant when it leaves is crisp and clean. And in fact, the rule we typically follow is it's cleaner than the river that's receiving it. And that's actually a picture of the water as it's heading out of the wastewater treatment plant there on the slide. With the blue light is ultraviolet light, and it gives one last shot of disinfection before it heads out to the outfall and then to the river. So the facility itself is expanding. It can handle whatever you send its way, and it'll be able to support economic development, presuming that we get approval for the outfall and we are able to move forward with our partners to minimize some of these challenges. I do thank you for the opportunity to share this information, and generally want you to know that Wes is a resource and a partner for our community. I live here, and I think Oregon City is fantastic. So we want to make sure that you as businesses have what you need to succeed to the best we can. So feel free to reach out to us, and thank you so much. We'll be open and available to answer any questions you may have at the end of the presentation. with that, I'll turn it back over to Kent.
Okay, Chris. Well, thank you for all of that information. I think Water Environment Services, the facility and plant that you have there might be the best kept secret that we have in Oregon City. People don't realize how much actually goes through that facility each month and each year. And really without that, economic development and growth could not take place. So we thank you for everything you're doing, and especially for all the enhancement grants that you're providing. I actually was involved with one myself last year. It's amazing how many people have enjoyed walking on the new nature trails next to a stream that the grant was utilized for. Where that takes as we this COVID situation. Our next speaker is it's kind of a nice segue, as Chris was alluding to, the Outfall project going along the cove just south of Clackamas Park. Former Commissioner Brian Shaw has been very involved in working on various diagrams, sketches, illustrations, layouts to better utilize this unique resource for Oregon City. It's very special to have a park located next to the confluence of two major rivers in the Clackamas and Willamette. And I've been there many times and with my dogs for walks, and I'm looking forward to whatever have going forward. Brian, do you want to share a little bit more with our group?
Yes, thank you, Kent. You can hear me and see me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're going to be talking about Clackamas Park here. And as a, when I was a commissioner, you know, we always kind of adopt a project as we go along. And I got pretty involved with this and the Cove. Jerry Herman kind of roped me into some work on the Cove there to do mitigation work. And it was exciting, Jerry, but I kind of moved my efforts over here to the Clackamas Park. So anyway, this is, I've had, there's, you know, you've got to look at this park and say, you know, what do you want this to be? Do you want it very pedestrian? Do you want it very vehicular and all of this? So I've chosen a path here to make it as pedestrian as possible, yet still accommodate vehicular traffic and stuff through here, because it's a pretty unique park. We've got a RV park, we've got a boat ramp, we've got a skate park, we got horseshoe pits, you know, all of this in this little area basically. And I think, Kent, you can see the park right now, right? Can you guys see the park?
No, Sherry hasn't shared those
No,
slides.
not yet.
Okay.
There we go.
Right, showing these. Well, that's showed the number one slide, which so you can't show it on my computer, Sherry. So, all right. So I think you're looking at the existing park right now. Okay, and so during my research here on the park, I ran into 3 different conversations. One is obviously the boat ramp. Right now, the boat ramp is on its last fix. So we have to make a decision on the boat ramp. And also the property next to McDonald's, which is city/urban renewal property, vacant. I received numerous phone calls from developers and architects wanting to know if that's available for development. And my response was always, well, as far as my perspective, no, because as you cross that bridge into Oregon City from Gladstone and you look across there, you basically see the river and the bridge and kind of the falls up there and stuff. So you know you're in Oregon City when you cross that bridge. If we were to develop that property right there, that would take that vista out of the equation here. So my proposal was to keep it kind of in the land bank for Oregon City, but it kind of moves into the other topic, which was the RV park. There's always been questions about that. So those little 3 items I'm going to be talking about here a little bit. So let's talk about the boat ramp. Since I'm not a real boater, I decided, well, you know, I'm going to put together a focus group of predominant fishermen that use this facility, this river, a lot, and ask them, you know, well, number one, do we need a boat ramp here? Obviously, we have Sport Craft to the south, and we have Meldrum Bar up at the north in Gladstone. And their answer is yes, but, you know, if it came to it, we could live without it, but it's really nice to have it. So if we were to have a boat ramp, where does it go? Does it go into the Clackamas like it is now, or does it go into the Willamette? Well, the fishermen would prefer the Willamette, you know, like Meldrum Bar does and Sportcraft. But the State Marine Board, who helps finance these boat ramps, said, we will not give you a dime of money if you try to put it on the Willamette. If you put it back at the Clackamas, we'll probably pay you about 75% of what that thing would cost. So kind of went that direction with that. And so we've had we had a consultant come in and give us a few scenarios of that boat ramp. And his highly recommended suggestion was to have the new boat ramp about 300 feet towards the Willamette there, 300 feet from where it's at now. And which means it would take up quite a bit of the park, trying to get the traffic and loading, unloading area to that. And then when it gets that far away, then you have to have new facilities like restrooms and stuff like that. So I'll show you how I kind of address that here in a little bit. Next thing is this boat is the RV park. Now, believe it or not, this actually makes a few bucks. It actually makes some money, and it's also it's nice to have in Oregon City when you have guests and things, but it's also part of the tourism plan from Oregon City that, you know, we have multiple sites where people can stay, whether it's the river shore just to the right up here, or well, you have to go to Gladstone to the other hotel there, but, you know, or you have this RV park, and, you know, which can flood occasionally and everything. So you're going to see where I did a little overlay of this, and to see if we could relocate the RV park. Because, you know, I guess myself, I'm looking at this whole river frontage on the Willamette side here and why we're not taking advantage of that. And so that kind of gave me the motivation to see if we could really move that RV park. So I decided to think about moving it over into that vacant property next to McDonald's, which the city owns. And and then free up that shoreline along the Willamette there for a more pedestrian environment. So that's how this all came about. And so I'm going to show you a drawing here. Sherry, maybe we can go to the next one there. Maybe. I've got it here. Do you see it on mine here at all?
Yeah, we can see it, Brian.
Okay, so I just did a real quick overlay of that slide I had there before here. This was done a couple of years ago. So, but so I tried to keep it, as you can see, more pedestrian, more user-friendly, and not, you know, but still be able to accommodate parking and traffic. And this is considering that we would still use the boat ramp. So my thought was that we would only have to move that boat ramp about 100 feet away from where the existing one is, and move and kind of and angle it so that we don't have the current flow and stuff that we do now that jeopardizes people trying to use that boat ramp. And this, fortunately, we have a guy named Jerry Herman here, who's the river whisperer, I call him, and he knows pretty well what the flow of that river is. And so he kind of helped me with this. But so this allows us to use all of the facilities and infrastructure that's already there. And we could actually keep the existing boat ramp there for personal watercraft or something like that, or we take it out and we allow this whole little more beachfront. You know, we don't really have a beach in Oregon City, and that actually provides a lot of recreation there and stuff. So we actually removed the old boat ramp and just built a new one there, but it allows a little bit more of the usage of that water area there on the front of a beach setting. So, and this allows us to keep the horseshoe pits, the skate park there. That white circle you see above there is a skate park for those who aren't familiar with that, and the existing parking. And so let's move over to where the RV park was. Like I said, I preferred to just relocate that over to across the main street or the Clackaman Drive, and use that property next to McDonald's for a new, really nice RV park. But what we have to do is worry about overflow parking and things like that when things get busy in that park. And so you'll see right along the street there, this little kind of elbow, that's where I relocated the parking area. And I think there's another 60 spots there or something like that. But what it did was allow us to use the green frontage and pedestrian and better use of the riverfront this way. It's more contiguous with what we've got. Hopefully, as we complete our riverfront plan, we'll go up clear to the Willamette, the Falls project. The blue lines that you see here are pathways, how you can get around the site and stuff. And like I say, I just kind of did this in a quick way and put some ideas down and stuff. We did hire a consultant to do a master plan on this a few years ago. And according to the new park director, they are working on this once again. And so I'm not sure what it's going to end up this time, but I was going to try and see. You happen to see this picture now. William, do you see that one?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. This is the what a consultant came up with. And you can see where there's some of this I like and some that I don't. And number one, let's just look at that RV park, and we moved it over to that site, and you get, I think it's 48 spaces in there for an RV park. So that really looks good. And then you can kind of see where it was down there in the larger oval. They're calling that a riparian flood control area, that large oval. I don't know how you control flooding down there. So that one there, I still had a question for him about, but even if it wasn't the flood control, it was just a grass area and stuff. It really looks good. And then he has to the right there, that smaller oval is, I don't know if you can see my cursor here or not, but this is.
I'm marking this up for you, Brian.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the smaller oval here is a lawn, And then it has shelters, picnic shelters and stuff beside it. As we move north down the shore here, he has put some parking, and this would be, and there's a turnaround there where you could actually unload personal watercraft if you wanted to, right there, which is okay. Now, my problem with his design here, he really eats up a lot of the existing park. And because as he put that little parking lot in there, and then as you go up to the street, Clackamas Drive, he takes right off on that curve and comes down into the park and comes around to where the boat ramp is and the parking for the boat ramp. So that's the new road down to the boat ramp and boat ramp parking. But you can see how far away that road is from way up on top. That little gray, looks like a puzzle piece, is actually the skate park. And right now, the traffic area and the road to the boat ramp stuff is right next to that skate park. So you can see how far down he moved that into the park. And so that's pretty concerning. That's even, and there he has moved that boat ramp to 300 feet. So you can see that there has been, I hope that the new plan they're coming up with now has taken into some of these considerations that, because this looks like it's more vehicular oriented than what I would like anyway. So that's kind of where I'm at here. And like I say, it's under investigation right now with the new parks director and a consultant, I believe. And so that's what I have for you today. We got to keep in mind that there's probably going to be, once the cove builds out, there's probably going to be 1,000 people next door to this, that this has got to be their home also. This is going to be their park, and then with Dan's project there, those apartments and the hotel and everything, I mean, this is actually, as long as we get better access to it from his place, this is actually going to be more in use there also. So anyway, that's my story. And any questions here, we can, Mr. West will gladly reference those. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Brian. And those illustrations really helped a lot when we were trying to visualize moving the RV park up to the property next to the McDonald's and then turning what is a gravel area now for the RV park into green space. I agree with you 100%. The RV park would not block the views and vistas from 99E looking out towards the river. It actually moves the RV park probably further out of the floodplain also.
It does, yes.
Fire, which is positive. But just restoring the riverfront property back to a natural state really, again, makes that such a jewel for the residents in the Cove and just about anybody who wants to come down there and visit. The trees that are in the park right now are very established, mature, just special trees. And we want to try to save as many of those as we can in the new redesign. So thank you for that update. We really appreciate it. And wish you the best of luck as it goes forward. Well, Brian mentioned Jerry Herman's name quite a bit. So now we're going to bring in our last panelist. Jerry is the guru when it comes to water resources. He has several committees that have been involved over the years in looking at how we can better utilize the Willamette and the Clackamas River for various types of uses, whether it's fishing, recreational, or just the beauty of it. So Jerry's going to talk a little bit about the mitigation programs that are available to go ahead and enhance the water quality in the Cove and how part of the area surrounding the Cove could be turned into a special park. So Jerry, you want to take it away?
Yes, sir. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to start out with the North End District. This is exciting. We're going to discover the North End District from that Abernethy Bridge all the way to the top of your screen is the North End District. 500 acres I want to refer to today that are potentially available for some assistance if we'll get our act together and start looking at other resources that could be available to us. You can see the cove at about 2 o'clock in the upper part of that photograph. We're going to go to the next slide here for just a second. Thank you, Sherry. Sherry's just great. I scared her half to death today with all this stuff I unloaded on her. Look at those red blobs. Those red blobs are not forest fires. They're not city fires. Those are opportunity areas. By the way, there's a green one right across from there where I grew up in West Lynn. High upon a hill so noble stands our West Lynn High, even to this day. All right, those red blobs refer to areas that mitigation or alternative funding could help solve some problems, such as Clackamas Park. Things Brian talked about. I want to give credit to everybody that's been on this program today, because everybody that's been on this program today was a part of the River Assets and Opportunities Task Force, including the Economic Development Director for the city in the past, and the Parks Director and others. We had a commissioner or two, Frank O'Donnell, show up. And that group helped me look at some of these ideas that have come together today for you to look at what can we do on a bigger scale. Clackamas Park needs help. You heard that from Brian. The Cove is more than water quality. There's lands that were never designed for development in the Cove. There were ancillary lands that could be enhanced with other funding sources, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Dan Fowler's efforts and the end of the Oregon Trail along Washington Street and all things that have happened with private investment could be assisted by funds if those funds are used to improve environmental assets, water quality, fish and wildlife values. Songbird sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like green thinking. Well, there's a green thinking group out there called the Mitigation Banking System. Let me talk about that for just a second. In Portland, back in World War II, the center of our World War II effort in the Northwest region was a Portland Harbor and up in Vancouver. And many of those businesses had impacts on the environment that were not important at that time. It was important to win World War II. After World War II, from the Broadway Bridge down to the Columbia River, 15 miles, Governor John Kitzhaber, in his wisdom, said, we don't want a Superfund site there. We want to get those businesses, city and others, together to solve their environmental problems that they created in World War II and thereafter in commerce. We're going to establish a mitigation trust fund, the Lower Harbor Trust Fund. So Governor Kitzhaber got people to do that, and into that pool, about $1 billion went over time to begin to solve problems in the Lower Harbor. Governor Kitzhaber lost his fight against having it become a Superfund site because environmental folks, more extreme than myself, decided that it should be a Superfund site. So now EPA controls everything for the last 15 miles from the Broadway Bridge to the Columbia River. But those businesses would rather expend monies to clean up what they have to and then enhance upriver resources all the way to the end of the Lower Harbor Trust Fund district, which is Willamette Falls. So we're going to go to the next slide for just a moment. I gave you that background because what is he talking about? 1990s plan here for the Cove and Washington Street and the North End District was done by Clackamas County and the city. This is 1990. It shows the Oregon City Shopping Center to the left, Clackamas Park to the top, the Clackamas River joining the Willamette, and of course the Cove. And it also shows Washington Street with all sorts of improvements for people and wildlife. Guess what? We've had 30 years to get this thing going, and I think it's time to get with it and get some of these things done. Phase 1 of the Cove is complete. Phase 2 has to do with additional improvements and also facilities for housing and things like that. But this master plan is interesting to me because its concept area was the entire North End District. 30 years old. This was adopted as a master plan in 1990. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, what is a mitigation district? Well, some could say, well, what is a mitigation district? It's a district that comes together to solve a problem. And how does it work? What is its method? The city must declare, any city who wants to participate, or any entity, including private developers, by the way, a mitigation interest and establish a mitigation process with professionals. Professionals assist in identifying opportunities along with the city or the private developer, whatever it happens to be. Agencies then, like Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and many others participate in looking at the realistic aspects of the benefits of the plan. That is part of it. The mitigation bank that can provide the funding is then requested to support the funding. Then if the city or the entity, private developer, whoever likes the concept, then the professionals work through funding by the mitigation bank, not by the city, not by the private developer, and they begin to design the project. Those professionals, there's a cursor in the way. Is that our cursor? Get our cursor out. Okay. The professionals then begin the process of letting contracts and overseeing the project. That means managing the project. So other people don't have to do the work. They are the experts that know how to do the work in concert with the hosting city or private developer. Projects may involve youth or volunteers. My dream is to see 1% of these kind of projects like goes to art. 1% in the future go to youth in our area. One city commissioner asked me, what's in this for you, Jerry? I said, you know what? I'm happy and I'm satisfied with life, but I want my youth and probably 1,000 other from Oregon City Senior High School to play a role in these projects, which I'm going to show you a little bit more. Trails, habitat, recreation, they're all eligible. They all have to pass the test of benefiting fish, wildlife, and the environment, though. They must do that. The mitigation projects then are maintained in perpetuity. This can't get better. The mitigation fund supports the long-term maintenance of improvements. And then if the city or the private developer wants to have some kind of support come back to him for providing him or her or the entity for providing the resource of land, a host fee then goes back to those parties. Let's continue. Next slide. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What others have got, somebody said to me, this is just too good, Jerry. Where did you come up with this? I said, you know what? I was the Parks and Recreation chairman for the city of Gladstone for a while when this came to them, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And the city couldn't believe it either. But let's talk about what some cities have gotten. City of Portland, over 1,000 acres of city-related and adjoining commercial lands along the river in that lower 15 miles, the Lower Harbor Trust Fund area, have been enhanced with this trust fund. They're now being maintained by the trust fund. Remember, their desire is to get out of the business of making all the habitat be number one. They still want to use their land, so they're happy to invest in other upriver areas where the habitat is really better and the possibilities of spawning fish and so forth occurring would be more predictable. City of Gladstone, our next door neighbor, 4 years ago entered into agreements with the Lower Harbor Trust Fund and other resources like that, have had 3 parks rebuilt, says rebuilt, totaling nearly 100 acres. Those parks now include a lot of wildlife elements. One particular park, Meldrum Bar and Meldrum Slough, there's close to 50 acres in that one park alone that were never usable by the public that are now usable by both people and wildlife. There's actually spawning potential for fish at Meldrum Bar, of all things. You'd never believe it. Doll Beach Park, right across from Clackamet Park, by our boat ramp, has received about 20 acres worth of improvements there. City of Milwaukee heard about this. While Oregon City was considering this whole thing, the city of Milwaukee, under the leadership of Mayor Gamba and his commission, said, we're going to do this. We want to see Kellogg Creek restored. We want to see wetlands enhanced. We want to see a non-performing fishway, which has never worked, taken out. And we want potentially up to 100 acres of our lands made available to this process. They had to commit $25,000 for the initial study, which, by the way, Oregon City already did that to get it going. But once the study to determine eligibility and opportunity areas was defined, then the trust fund takes over. City of Milwaukee's underway right now. Let's go to the next slide. All right. What we might get, first of all, I must tell you the city in 2017, when we took this concept, our River Assets and Opportunities Task Force Group, to the city agreed to get it as a part of a DDA, due diligence agreement for the code process, let the developer and the city include mitigation as a strategy. That strategy still exists as an adopted principle of the city. Improvements to Clackamas Park could occur, trails, habitats, interpretation and education facilities, improvements to Clackamas Cove, trails, fishing, fishing outlook areas for seniors and others, birding sites, riparian habitats, which means riverside or cove-side habitat improvements. All of this was planned to occur through private development. Some of this can occur through the trust fund. Washington Street improvements, what would we do on Washington Street? Guess what? All the drainage of Washington Street heads towards Clackamas Cove. That means end of the Oregon Trail as a potential site for some simple projects of bioswales and things like that. Beautification with, of course, a trails and theme. Wouldn't we want that, Gail? Those kind of things would go on into Clackamas Cove master planning as a part of the mitigation district that we're talking about here. Some other improvements that could occur at Metro South. There's a transfer station. There's a wetland there that was built a long time ago. We participated in building that nobody seems to understand. And there's all this adjoining land where brand new wetlands were built when the jug handle, when I talk about a jug handle, they think, have you been drinking? No, I haven't. The jug handle was a project, of course, to realign the access and make possible the river's development and so forth. Whatever the case, 12 acres of wetlands that were built that have beautiful characteristics, but they're off limits to the public. Not because they were designed that way, because nobody included that. They could be included, and a passage right underneath Interstate 205 exists that was put in for cattle and horses, and that could be the passage into Clackamas Cove to connect everything together in a beautiful streetscape, drainage, and beautification project. Let's go to the last slide here, if there is one more. All right, the North End District. It can include these kind of things. And then many of these areas can be assisted through mitigation funding if we'll now move forward on that subject. Remember, Gladstone's gotten over 10 million in improvements plus a host fee every year from that trust fund now. They're being maintained in perpetuity. Milwaukee is underway for the same thing. Lake Oswego is looking at this with real desire. Let's get busy and get Oregon City on the radar again and get our project, which was initiated, mitigation study. Let's get it done and get back in the queue for some assistance at Clackamas Cove and the things we've talked about. If you need any additional information, let's go to the last slide here. You can give us a call. Rivers of Life Center, we're the ones that are kind of helping orchestrate the work of the River Assets and Opportunity Task Force. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we're going to meet. And Brian, you're right, I roped you into it. And boy, you did a great job on that master plan concept for Clackamas Park. That's what we do, is we look at different things that individuals can contribute towards the process. 8th Street dock below the courthouse, where tour boats could come up, real tour boats, pull in and drop people off. That's one of our projects we're interested in too. But on this North End District, there's an opportunity now. Get a hold of us if you'd like. Now what?
Well, Jerry, you're good. I'm just trying to start my video here again. But in the meantime, well, thank you for that presentation. Obviously, this is a tremendous opportunity that you're discussing. about the mitigation program. There we go. You're still on here, or you're muted, so you may not be able to respond. How long does it take for a group like those of us in the Oregon City Business Alliance or someone involved with the Cove development to apply for these mitigation dollars?
The city took the first step. Can you hear me?
Yes.
City took the first step by signing an agreement with an organization called RestoreCap that works with the mitigation bank and professionals in 2017. That happened. Probably another year or two is all that's required to get these projects going once they're identified. It isn't like it takes 5 years of master planning. The initial work's been done. A water quality study was done, and they figured out the Cove has got big water quality problems, which I didn't talk about, that can be corrected too through this mitigation funding. So these things are potentially correctable now.
So could the enhancements of Clackamas Park for more engagement with wildlife and interpretive stations along these new trails also be tied into this mitigation fund?
Absolutely. We consider this from a North End district perspective. Everything I've gone over is eligible. The focus should be initially on the Cove, but the park is right next to the Cove. They go hand in hand.
Right. And the closer you can get from the park to the Cove gets you closer to all the other economic development that's taking place in that North Gateway district, which really is what we're trying to do, is connect people to nature as much as possible. So thank you for that. Tim West, we're going to turn it over to you now. I think we have 6 questions that have been submitted by our participants. Do you like to start with your first question, and we'll get everybody back on the screen because we're not sure who the question is going to be directed to yet.
Well, we have questions for everybody, and the first is going to go, well, in order of the speakers. Dan, the first question is for you. It's how will the hotel and apartment developments deal with potential flood issues? That area was certainly seriously underwater during the '96 flood.
Well, we have a great team of people that have looked at all of that. Our quarterback is Lloyd Hill Architects over in West Lynn, and we have civil engineers and natural resource people. You have to do a balanced cut and fill. So the hotel, if you notice back on those slides, it was elevated. There was some rock wall next to Washington Street. It's required by code to be 1 foot out of the floodplain, and that's what we've done. The main floor of the hotel is out of the floodplain, as is the future apartment project. There's a level down below. There's actually parking underneath the building, and the elevated residential units, again, will be at least 1 foot out of the floodplain. Then there's a connecting path out of the floodplain that would take in an emergency those people to safety.
All right. So there's one more question for you, Dan, and it appears that the railroad quiet zone is going to be difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish due to cost. Does that affect your project of putting the hotel rooms and housing next to the tracks?
We actually took a look at the noise. We did an acoustic study. We had sound receiving equipment over a 24-hour period that actually recorded sound for a full 24 hours. Every train that went by, everything. And then we modeled from that acoustic study the type of construction that would be needed to muffle that sound. So it's amazing what you can do with construction methods, with RC channel, resonant channel. It's a vibration separator of sound, and with the window patterns and window design. So we've taken the noise into account. The last thing we would want is either from a residential standpoint or a hotelier to be bothered by that. Now, it is next to the track. There's going to be a little bit of sound. There's going to be a little vibration. But through that study and then the building methods, we're able to mitigate it to a huge degree. One other thing I just wanted to mention, when built under, let's just say, normal pre-COVID conditions, this hotel will generate over $260,000 a year in hotel motel tax money. it'll be quite a big boost to the Civic Improvement Trust and to local committees that can use that funding to further enhance projects surrounding tourism. So we're anxious to get it going.
Very good, very good. So next question is for Gail. And this one is, have the tribes indicated any thoughts regarding the end of the Oregon Trail somehow tie in to the development of the Blue Heron or the Riverwalk? Gail, you have to unmute. Oh, can you
You're
unmute?
muted, Gail.
Well, I have,
There we-
yeah.
There we
My
go.
screen must be dirty or something. I don't know. I kept. So it's interesting you say that because, you know, part of our long-term dreams is to have a plank house and the post down at the center. And I asked John George the other day about how we should start working on that project. And we look at it as, you know, being a visitor center, we're bringing in a lot of people from a lot of different areas, and they usually or oftentimes will start at the center, and then our job is to get them through town and through the state and you know, all along the trail. So yeah, we are going to start working on some of those things. We just look, it's another way to market each other, because we send them to their museum too. Right now we have some maps and things, and inside the visitor center we have videos that show their museum, and so yeah.
Very good, very good. All right, so the next questions go to Brian Shaw, and I have a couple of them on the boat ramp. So unless the state board, Marine Board, has changed their position, they have been adamant at pursuing a $250,000 payback for the existing ramp should Oregon City decide not to follow the Marine Board requirements to locate the new ramp where the Marine Board requires. And this is another one associated with that is why does the state feel that a ramp located so close to the existing ramp would survive the current, knowing that an angular ramp reduces the effect of the current? So how about those boat ramp questions, Brian?
Well, I know that the repair of the existing ramp money from the Marine Board was time sensitive. And I don't know what happened after that. So this is news if they're coming back after that money for some reason. I'm not sure, because it must have happened after the fact, or for me. But and as far as I'm not sure if the Marine Board is using their decision based on what the consultant said, but the consultant said he didn't say no to whether we could move that 100 feet away and angle it, because right now his proposal was to 300 feet, but it was going to go straight out into the channel just like the existing one. So the thought was there that if you angled it, you could actually pull it up within 100 feet of the ramp and still make it functional and still be able to use the infrastructure there. Don't know the end result of that either, where the Marine Board is. And I think that it sounds like the existing commission is going to have a work session or something on that. So that would be interesting to see what the latest conversation is with the Marine Board on the.
Okay, very good. So Brian, here's one more. Do you have any idea on how much seasonal income the RV park brings into Oregon City?
I thought it was $100,000 or something like that. I could be wrong on that. It may not be that much. It could be like 50,000, right? I do know there was a profit made, which was, I just thought that was, I thought that was kind of interesting. So, and that surprised me because we did ask the past parks director about that, and they said, yeah, it actually makes money. So I don't know if we take into account all of the things we have to do to that park when it floods and we have to get it back up and running again, and each year. So yeah, don't know.
Very good, very good. So this next question could go either to Jerry or to Brian, but Jerry, you probably know a little bit more. Any talks or plans for houseboats in Oregon City?
What? Houseboats?
Houseboats.
We're talking about houseboats?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Farther up the River Assets Opportunity Task Force consisted also of the founders of Sportcraft Landing. The marina. I keep getting them mixed up. Kim and her husband Eric Dye would love to see floating houseboats built as a part of their development because the boating public just isn't there anymore. The fishing is diminished mainly because of the predation by the sea lions and such. So the boat rental spaces in the moorage are going to waste in many cases. And so they'd love to see the upper portion of their operation, beautiful floating homes, which would of course increase the property value on the water property value. And then they would improve their entire facility at Sportcraft. That's again what the River Assets Task Force wants to do. And it's open to anybody is take these ideas and move forward with them. Houseboats are welcome. Yes.
Okay, very good. So one last question, and this is for you, Jerry. So what lessons were learned from the 3 prior projects out of Portland, Gladstone, and Milwaukee? Namely, what were the things that didn't go well and need improvement or could have been done differently?
All right. First of all, I want to introduce my assistant here. Come on here. Get in the picture here. This guy, if you can see him, he's the one that helps me make this stuff happen, did the graphics. This is Gabriel. Hi. 18-year-old Gabriel, like all these young people that work with us, have special talents. Let me give you an example. Gladstone, when I was on the Park and Rec Board and their chairman for a while, there were problems with the initial contract that didn't allow it to be executed quite as efficiently, but that got resolved. It was a brand new concept of working upriver with new cities. In the case of Milwaukee, that mayor down there, Mayor Gamba, just 3 weeks ago, unleashed this whole process on his council, and they're all for it. I don't think that they see any problems at this point. I can't give you an outline, but I can say in Portland, even Savi's Island has a private developer who went after this mitigation strategy, has built a 500-acre development at the upper end of Savi's Island on old industrial land, cleaned it all up, and made it a beautiful housing area. I think if you asked him, it's been nothing but good.
Oh, very good. All right, and we have a couple of questions from William Gifford. William, do you want to speak up and ask your questions for Chris Storey?
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, it's not so much for Chris Storey, it's for Wes in general. Is that because Chris is an officer with Wes, the Water Environment Services, Chris is legally not allowed to advocate for a measure. We are, as a 501c6, the OCBA can and does advocate for certain things. We have written an argument in favor of the Wes measure. I think it's important for our listeners to understand that this only is required to be on the ballot because of our city charter. It will only be on residents within the city limits of Oregon City that will have an opportunity to vote on this. That's because there is an activity in the park that is not directly park related, and that's why it has to be on the ballot. It again, as Chris mentioned, it is not a monetary issue. There should be no visible effect on the park other than the potential for improvement to that park. And there is it's more like a formality to get this done. The impact on wildlife habitat and so on, such as spawning areas and so on, is also being carefully attended to. And it should be a no-brainer, but I just want to put in a point of advocacy to get this done. There was a little discrepancy in some of the numbers that you quoted, Chris. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, I spoke too fast. I think I said 2.5 million. The project cost is 21.5 million, but it's still fully funded. So, what's a decimal point, right? But it's still not a money measure, and it's fully ready to be constructed if we get the permission from the voters.
So this will not impact ratepayers' rates. This will not impact property owners' taxes.
Correct. West does not receive property taxes.
Oh, well, I just want to personally thank each and every one of our panelists today for a very informative, very insightful, very entertaining presentation. Each one of the participants that were able to attend our webinar today came away with a lot more information as to what the potential of the North District, that gateway area, how important that actually is for the future growth, and more importantly, pushing a visible climate to outside business who may want to Oregon City. Activity breeds activity. And when you start seeing the cranes for Dan's project, you're seeing people going to the co-location and other types of uses. And we didn't talk about the landfill today. That's a whole nother opportunity that I know is getting a lot of attention. We will have information on that as we go forward. And when that information is available to the public, I'm sure they'll be releasing some press releases, and we'll be sharing all that information with our. Just wanted to also thank two people that are running for office in Oregon City for the City Commission positions, Hayden and Jeff Aiken, registered, participating, and I'm putting out a little challenge to the two of you, as well as our incumbent O'Donnell and Denise McGriff, City Commissioners, as everyone election coming up on November 3rd, and the Oregon City Business Alliance would like to use our date in October to go ahead and do a where each one of the candidates could, out of the topics we discussed today, but also just share their vision, their platform, if they were to be or re-elected, as to how take our city forward during the 4 years of that new term. So Dave, Jeff, Frank, if you're listening to this, if you could respond back to us on the Q&A, so we can mark you down that you are confirmed. Again, it's the 4th Tuesday, October. So at off of there 11:30, and we'll try to reach Denise and see if we can get her confirmation as well. I'd like to thank my co-hosts today, William and Sherry Imes, and our questionnaire, Tim West. You guys did a job.
Yeah.
And yes.
Excuse me, before you wrap this up, in the chat, there is a comment from Commissioner O'Donnell, who answers more directly the question that was posed to Brian Shaw, that it says that the RV park brings in about $130,000 in revenue annually, which is $110K camping fees, $13K in dump station, and $7K in transient lodging. $13,000 in dump station. That's more than I would have imagined. So let's not forget about forget about.
They're lined up down there.
Yeah. So thank you for that.
Sorry. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us, William. That actually is a pretty good resource. Whatever man we come up with, we continue to resource down at Clackamas Park. So you gave information. I hope you will respond to our invitation to participate in our forum webinar next month. Again, thank everybody on the panel. I want to thank all of our participants. Stay safe, breathe in some fresh air, and we'll be out of this COVID situation soon. To see you all in October. Being said, see you soon.
Bye.
See ya.
Right.
You.